Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inside Investing, the show that helps you level up your financial knowledge and sharpen your investing skills. I'm your host, Nugua Haruna. Thank you for joining us in our kickoff to Investor Education Month. The entire month of October here at TD Direct Investing is dedicated to helping you build the confidence to invest and trade. And we hope today's conversation will help you take those first steps. Our panel of social media stars will offer some tips to get you started. Make sure to stick around to the end of our conversation, as we'll hear some of the lessons they learned from their biggest successes and mistakes. But first, I quickly want to highlight some features of our broadcasting platform to help you get the most out of your viewing experience. Now, if you're looking to learn more about our panel today, you are able to find out some more information. On the left side of your screen, you can see their social media pages and find out a little more about them right before we jump into our conversation. If you want to check out some of our previous episodes of Inside Investing, you're able to do that by clicking on the little icon that says Inside Investing. I will encourage you to follow us on social media so you're able to scan the QR codes that we have on there. You can follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel as well if you want to check out some previous episodes. Now, as I mentioned, October is Investor Education Month, so we have some really great guests lined up throughout the month of October. If you want to check out some upcoming Inside Investing episodes, click on some of the links that we have at the center of the screen there, at the bottom center of the screen. You're able to register for some upcoming events. I want to give you an idea on how to navigate around the platform itself. So right now you have a screen where you're seeing me. You're able to maximize, minimize that, move that out of the way so you can do the most important thing in today's session, which is ask questions. You'll see a box on the right side of your screen there that lets you ask questions. So join the conversation and type in your questions there. We really encourage you to type in your questions because we want to get you to feel like you're part of the conversation. If you're streaming on YouTube, I encourage you to register using the link in the description. And that way you can join the conversation that we're having right now. Okay, with that said, let's welcome our panelists and get our conversation going. Joining us are three social media stars of the personal finance and investing space. So Shay Huang is the founder of Humble Trader, and she helps about 1.3 million subscribers on YouTube learn how to trade. Welcome, Shay.
Hi, Nugua. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited for our conversation today. You've joined us on the show numerous times, so looking forward to some of the knowledge that you're going to be sharing with us today. We also have Adrian Barr. He's the founder of Canadian in a T-shirt. And Adrian educates and entertains more than 170,000 subscribers on YouTube. Welcome back, Adrian.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, super excited for our conversation. And finally, we have Nelson So, who is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and a chartered professional accountant. He delivered a fantastic TEDx talk about financial literacy that has over 150,000 views. It's really great to have you today, Nelson. This is your first time with us, so I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
All right, so let's get to know each of you a bit better. And Adrian, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
You're an engineer by trade who's become a full-time investing content creator. That's a really interesting career pivot. So what inspired you to make that switch?
Yeah, so I mean, my whole career has been really a roller coaster. And for me, I mean, I never envisioned myself I would become a full-time content creator, but I've always been passionate about money. And a big reason for that is because as an engineer, I'm all about efficiency. You know, I know how hard I work for my money. So I want to make sure that my money is working just as hard for me. So that's kind of where that passion and that kind of intellectual curiosity about investing in personal finance came from. And about, you know, how I became a YouTuber, that really started at my last job where I was a software engineer. And I would hire anywhere between 10 or 20 co-op students every semester. And what I like to do, I would like to host these kind of lunch and learn sessions where I would teach them, you know, life skills, like how to do interviews, how to write a resume. But I also taught them about money, how taxes work, how credit cards work. And these students, their eyes lit up, like they ate it up. No one had ever taught them these things. And I realized after every couple of months, every new batch of students would come in, I'm kind of giving the same speech again and again. So why not, you know, kind of post these lessons on video format on YouTube, and hopefully other people can benefit from that. And I've been very fortunate in the sense that, what started off purely as a hobby turned into a career.
And you know what I love about when I watch your videos, Adrian, is the passion that you bring to these conversations. And I can hear that passion right now. So I will say it was a great career pivot. We're all for it. We're enjoying the content, and you're teaching a lot of people great stuff.
I appreciate that.
So Nelson, we're going to move on to you. So not only are you a published author, you've also done something many content creators aspire to. You delivered a TEDx talk. So what was it like going up on that stage?
Honestly, it was a really rewarding experience, just getting up there and being ready to have a positive impact in the community. But also, it was quite scary. Like, I'll be honest, I was nervous getting up there, and I've delivered over 50 talks at conferences, schools, keynotes. But every time I feel the same way. I feel nervous, but if you know your stuff, once you get up there, it's pretty smooth sailing.
I absolutely enjoyed that talk. It was very applicable, and I thought it was apt, especially to the audience that you were speaking to. So absolutely fabulous. And so finally, Shay, you're one of the most popular traders in social media with about 1.3 million subscribers on YouTube alone. That's mind-blowing. But you're also a successful full-time trader yourself. So what made you want to teach others how to trade?
So I first started a YouTube channel as a passion project on the side. Prior to day trading, I had a real job in film and VFX. So it came naturally for me to record videos and to document my journey. And it's only once I started my YouTube channel that I get a lot of feedback from people and requests. They want to learn more about trading strategies because they like the way I kind of, as I say, no BS. Like, I don't sell them the dream. I don't sell them on the Lambos or the supercars. I try to give people the raw truth about how difficult day trading is. So people seem to enjoy that a lot. And so they want some more like realistic approach to trading and realistic education from me. So, I just kind of answered what my subscribers have been asking for. And it kind of just grew this way as a trading education channel. And I'm really happy for that.
Yeah, and with all the noise that is out there on social media, it's very refreshing to actually see someone who's actually honest when it comes to venturing into the investing or trading space. So I guess that's a testament to what people are actually looking for in social media. All right, so I want us to have a little fun, and I want us to get to know each of you a little better. So we're going to have a lightning round. I'm going to ask a few short questions, and you're going to share your take in as few words as possible. So are we ready to do this? Nelson, I'm going to start with you. So what's something you wish you knew about money 10 years ago?
Time in the market for long-term investing and building wealth is the most important thing.
All right. Power of compounding. All right. So I have another question for you. What was the moment you realized you made a positive difference in someone's financial life?
I had a client reach out to me this year, actually, and told me that he was able to afford and book his dream vacation to Italy because he had his financial literacy practices in place and working for him. So it made me feel really good to be able to help out.
That's an awesome testament to the impact they're actually making. So that's really great to hear. So Shay, I hope you're ready. You're up next. What's the weirdest trade idea you've received from a viewer?
Yeah, and I regret not taking that trade idea to this day. It was GameStop back in the end of 2020. That was the idea. I did not take it because I don't take trade ideas from people randomly on social media. But I kind of regret not taking the idea.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yep.
And I thank you for sharing that, because that is so, I love that realistic perspective, right? So people are able to see that there are times when, you do look back and say, maybe I should have traded that. Maybe I shouldn't have traded that. And I mean, with all the comments you get on your YouTube, on your videos, I think one of your videos has almost 11,000 comments. It is possible you might say, that's not a great idea. And then you look back and say, I probably should have taken it. Okay, I have one more question for you. What was the most interesting trader you spoke with in your trader interview video series?
Yes. So his name is Jason Shapiro. He's one of the he was a part of the Unknown Market Wizards book, and I had the honor of interviewing him. But I would say he's very knowledgeable, very interesting guy. Because when I first met him, he came to Vancouver to meet up with me to do the interview. I would just say he dressed in a very humble way, in which I almost thought he was, unfortunately one of the homeless people in Vancouver, but very smart guy. I met him. I was like, wow, you really cannot judge a book by its cover. So I feel really honored that I got to interview him. Jason Shapiro, very great guy, manages 9 figures in other traders and investors' money.
That's absolutely awesome. So I love that, where, don't judge a book by its cover. Yes. All right. So Adrian, we're moving on to you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So what's the moment you realized you made it as a social media content creator?
Sure. So I guess for me, the moment I realized that I made it was when I got recognized for the first time, and it actually kind of benefited me. This is a couple of years ago. My buddy and I were flying to New York, and we were at the airport, and we were stuck behind the security line. And lo and behold, the security agent recognized me. He was a fan of my YouTube channel. So he let me skip the line and walk right on through. But my buddy wasn't so lucky. So he had to wait 15, 20 minutes while I just got to waltz on through. So that was the moment I was like, yeah, you know what? I kind of made it.
I'll kind of say I'm guilty as well. I think the first time I met you, I asked for a picture. So, I don't blame him. All right. So next question for you. What's the most memorable interaction you've had with a subscriber to your channel?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So for me, I think everyone here can kind of agree. Like, we have a pretty lonely job. Like for me, I'm always just kind of sitting in a room alone, talking to a camera. So anytime I can meet like a viewer or a fan in person, shake their hand, hear their stories, it's always very rewarding and kind of soul nourishing for me. One that really stands in mind was a couple years ago, I was walking down the streets of Waterloo with my brother, and a fan ran up to me, walked up to me, shook my hand, and then invited me onto his podcast. And then a couple of weeks later, I joined him for my very first podcast. His name is Navjot, and he runs a great channel himself called Grow with Nav. And here we are, years later. Now we're really good friends. We've worked together. We've shared the stage many times. So that just kind of goes to show you never know who you can meet on the streets and what kind of relationships you can build. So, go out there, say hi, make those connections.
I think it also ties back to, you never know whose life you're impacting, right? So for yourself, you're thinking maybe everybody who subscribes to me are newbies, but you might actually have some well-known people out there who are actually subscribing to you as well. So I think that's a great memory. All right, so thank you all for sharing a little bit about yourselves here. I want us to get down to the heart of our conversation, which is about helping new investors and traders get started on the right foot. So Nelson, I want to start with you because you made an interesting point in your TEDx talk. And here's what you said.
We are setting ourselves up for failure by not understanding how money works. We're making money decisions based on entitlement and ego. Add easy access to credit to this mix, and this is a recipe for disaster.
So based on that, what are some of the money decisions that hold young people back from building their wealth?
No, but that's a great question. I think there's so many answers to that, but I'll share 3 just to keep time short here. The first one is fear of making mistakes. I think people always want to think about, and let's use a baseball analogy, they want to hit a home run on the first try. But you have to remember that if you hit singles and doubles, eventually you'll score points. So just stay the course and don't be scared to make mistakes. The second one is uncertainty of how to start. We've got some, really great resources created by our friends here on the panel today with Shay and with Adrian. Like, they throw out some really good content on how to start. So if you're uncertain about how to start, you got to take action. Like, you have to start somewhere and just learn. And the third one is, social media is so widely and easily accessible that sometimes people get caught in the trap of keeping up with the Joneses, which means like, hey, I saw my friend bought this cool thing and I need to, live up to that as well, or I need to surpass them. But keeping up with the Joneses will always keep you broke. So those are some of the common pitfalls that I've seen.
Right. So tying back to that point of keeping up with the Joneses, what's a simple step a young person could take to fight the temptations of lifestyles creep that often comes with a social media consumption?
Yeah, I love that. And I think, as we see on the screen here, lifestyle creep is when your income increases, but also your expenses increase. You think like, oh, I got this promotion, I have more money now. So all of a sudden I can upgrade my car, upgrade my house, but maybe you don't really need it. So to answer your question, a very simple way is, I'll keep it short by saying, don't try to live a Lamborghini lifestyle on a Toyota budget. And I'll say that again, don't live a Lamborghini lifestyle on a Toyota budget. And there's nothing wrong with Toyotas. I love Toyotas. But it's just when you live beyond your means, you just end up in a really bad place really quickly.
You shared some really great examples actually in the TEDx talk. You talked about some practical things that actually happened to you, lessons you learned. So, people watching, if you're interested in checking that out, you are able to check out Nelson's TEDx talk. Really informative. If you want to find out more about what Nelson spoke of. So, Adrian, we're going to move on to you.
Sure.
We often hear young people say they can't afford to invest now, so they'll put it off until later. And this is a decision that can really hurt you in the long run.
Yep.
So why isn't starting to invest early, even if it's just a little bit of money, why is that so important?
Yeah, so just to kind of echo a point that Nelson made earlier in the presentation, when it comes to investing, your biggest ally is time. And I can't overstate that enough. Like time in the market, giving your investments time to grow and compound and see that exponential growth, that's the biggest key to success in building long-term wealth. And it's really like the way that kind of boils down to is the power of compounding. What that means is basically as your investments grow, those gains, those profits, they also grow year after year. And so your rate of growth is actually accelerating year after year. But you need to give yourself enough time to let that kind of acceleration materialize to a significant amount. And if you look at like this graph, for example, you'll see this exponential graph. In the short term, 1 to 2 years, you're not going to see a huge amount of growth. But you fast forward 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and you get to the point where the profits, the gains you make from your investments will far outweigh the money that you put in. And that can only happen if you give yourself enough time. And the best way to do that is to start early on. And you don't need a lot of money to get started. Really, whatever you can. If that's $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can set aside today, it will pay off. It'll pay off tenfold in the future. And even better, if you can try to make a habit out of it, try to be consistent and consistently invest every single month. I will say one thing, the only case where I'll say it's not a good idea to start investing is when you have high interest debt, something like credit card debt, because they will charge anywhere from 20 to 25% interest working against you. And there's no investment out there in the world that can beat a guaranteed 25% loss. So if you have the high interest debt, focus on paying that off first. And if you don't have the high interest debt, start investing whatever you can.
So I think it's really great that you mentioned that, because one of the things that about compounding is if you're not taking advantage of it, it's taking advantage of you. That's
True.
one way to put it. So you mentioned credit card debt. If you're carrying a balance on your credit card, it's also compounding. Compounding's working there as well. So it's just something to be aware of. So for viewers who want to learn a little more about compounding and its impact, we actually have a great masterclass. So these are live educational sessions that we have with instructors. And that class is titled Time Value of Money, How Compounding Growth Can Help or Hurt You. That's going to be on Thursday, October 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I encourage you to register for that upcoming event. You can do that at td.com/IEM. So still speaking to you, Adrian,
Sure.
It can be easy to forget to invest.
Yeah.
And perhaps you may not have any money left over at the end of the month to actually invest. So what can a young person do to squeeze out savings that they need to actually set aside to invest?
No, that's an excellent question. And, it's human nature. It is so easy to come up with excuses and kind of justify our decisions saying like, hey, you know what? This month, I don't have any money to invest, but next month, I promise I'll do better. I don't do that. I don't even give myself the option. I take the emotion and that decision-making out of the equation. What I do is whenever I receive a paycheck, whenever I receive income, 10% of that I put aside to investments. No negotiation. It's non-negotiable. That money's gone. And the reason why I do that, well, there's two reasons. One, it kind of forces me, it puts a little bit of pressure and forces me to be a little bit of like financially creative on how to, come up with other streams of income and how to kind of stretch my budget. And number two, it really forces me to learn a really powerful habit, which was something Nelson also talked about earlier, how to make the most of your money, how to lower your expenses, and how you can learn to live off of only 90% of your income. And the reason why I said 10% is because that's a very manageable number. I'm not going to tell you to, invest half of your paycheck. That's not realistic. That's way too extreme. But if you can set aside 10% and learn to cut your expenses by 10% and learn to live off only 90% of your income, that's very doable for most people. And the best way to do that is if you can kind of even automate this process, right? So set up something like an automatic contribution where every 2 weeks, every month, whenever you get paid, 10% or whatever your number is automatically gets set aside and contributed to your investments. And you could even do something like fractional shares. That will help to make sure that all the money you put aside to investments are invested, even if it's not a large amount, even if it's not enough to purchase a whole share of a stock. With fractional shares, all of your money will be put into the market.
I love that you mentioned that. So for investors, you are able to set up something called a monthly contribution plan. So that's the automated contributions that you're talking about, Adrian. Yep. And you can also then set up like a systematic investment plan, which lets you automatically buy units of a mutual fund. But let's say you're not interested in purchasing a mutual fund. Adrian, you mentioned fractional shares. So investors have an ability to actually purchase that, which is a really great way to get into the market, purchase securities that maybe you could never dream of owning. And I know a lot of investors are maybe concerned about commission, but then there's TD Easy Trade that offers your first free trades every year at no commission. So you can take advantage of that as well. So thanks for sharing that, Adrian.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Shay, we're seeing some young people interested in trading rather than investing. And this is all thanks to social media and people on there bragging about getting rich quick. But the last time you were on our program, you said becoming a successful trader isn't so simple.
You need to trade very, very small. So instead of risking $1,000, $2,000, I was risking $10, $20. So when I lose $20. It sucks. But $20 is very much recoverable. And once again, like I said, we're just taking the first 6 months to a year as your market tuition, right? You're paying that $20 per day or $10 per day to learn how to trade.
All right. So why do you think it's so important to take a slow and steady approach to learning to trade?
Yeah, because learning to trade, you are essentially learning a brand new skill. It's almost like starting a business. Trading and investing are very different. Trading is not passive at all. In fact, it's extremely active. And it requires you kind of to go through the ropes and learn everything from scratch, almost like going back to school again. And when you think about it, when you go to school, university, or trade schools, you have to pay tuition. So that's how I see trading. If you want to start learning to trade, you definitely have to think about how much market tuition you have to pay and contribute to your future career as a trader. And you should start small, right? Like if you think about it, if you lose $10,000 in your first year or the first trade, you're going to be very frustrated, right? You won't be motivated to keep learning anymore. You are going to lose money no matter what when you first start trading. So you get to decide how much. So back to what I was suggesting, $10 per trade, $20 per trade. Like you're not going to make big money that way, but that's how everyone should start, right? You also won't lose big money. So I think social media doesn't show you the reality, which in general that most new traders starting out, you're probably going to lose money for the first 6 months or even a year. I was losing money for 2 years straight, and I thought I was being conservative. But the reason I kept on going is because I didn't lose anything super significant. And that's the reason I was able to stay in the grind and keep learning and to try to make trading work. So that's why I still recommend that for new traders who want to start out. You need to know the reality is that you're going to lose money, but you can be realistic with yourself with the expectation by risking just a small chunk of money instead of going in and swinging your entire TFA account in some random stocks.
You know what I was thinking, Shay, in terms of an analogy? It's when you first learn, or you're trying to learn how to swim, I don't know how many of us would jump in the deep end first, right? You want to start in the shallow end, so you still have some control over there, as opposed to just going all in. So I love what you said. It ties back to that, right? It's almost like it's a win or lose. That feels like gambling, which is nothing like what investing or trading should be. But you did mention something. You were saying new investors or new traders might lose 6 months to a year worth of money, and that might scare them off. And since we don't want to scare them off from trying, what's something that they could do to help limit their losses as they learn?
Yes, definitely start with paper trading. So essentially you're trading a simulated account with fake money. Start with paper trading to practice buying and selling stocks, familiarize with your whichever brokerage account you use to trade, and to practice your strategies. So there's tons of strategies you can learn online, but they're not all gonna resonate with your style, or your personality, or your risk tolerance. So try it out, try small size, try with fake account. And once you feel like you're ready, you have your journals, you journal all the trades, so you know what kind of strategies you should actually focus on. Then you can consider opening up a real account. And again, risk $10 per trade, $20 per trade. And that's how you it's almost like baby steps. You go with, fake money first, then small amounts of real money, and you go from there. You don't go in just buying 10,000 shares of whatever penny stock you see. You have to, pave your way. You have to earn your right to size up. It's what we call in trading. You earn the right to size up and to risk more eventually.
And, you're talking about risk management and how important that is. So it is important for investors, to have an idea on some of these risk management orders. So things like stop loss orders, trailing stops, just have an idea of what that looks like, because when it comes to trading, you might actually spend more time planning in terms of what your entry and exit positions are than you're holding the security, right? So has that ever happened to you, Shay, where you're spending more time planning entry and exit positions than, you buy a stock and then you have to exit within a short period of time?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When you're trading, you should really think about 90% of the time as a trader, we're just sitting there, just watching the market and planning our next move. Like we're kind of like stalking the stocks. I trade stocks, so I'm kind of just stalking the opportunities. I spend really few time actually pressing the buttons. Most of my time is planning and waiting. And that's what I think social media doesn't show a lot of times, and what a lot of new traders should realize. You're spending most of your time researching, analyzing stocks, planning your entries, your risk level, and your potential profit. You want to aim for, potentially 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 risk reward ratio. And all of these need to be planned before you actually enter the position. So yeah, for sure. Like I spend very little time actually pressing buttons and more time kind of planning what I should do with my positions.
I think we have a new saying from you, Shay. You just said stalking the stock. So that's a great one that you can just, new tagline. But I do want to mention that if you're trying to get started as a trader, TD Active Trader gives you the ability to set up paper trading accounts. So that's a great way for you to practice. So some of what Shay has talked about today gives you an opportunity to, do that planning. Actually take a look at what it looks like. It is paper money, so you're not actually having those real losses, but you have an idea of how well to finesse your strategy before you actually do start trading itself. Right, so Nelson, now I want to talk about social media, because it's obviously a prime source of investing and trading information for a lot of young people. Why do you think social influencers is such a popular source of investing perspective in the first place?
That's such a good question. Social media, my TED Talk is about social media and how it impacts people's decision-making. Everyone, I'm sure all of our viewers today have at least one social media account, like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or Meta. LinkedIn, something like that, where it's easily information is easily accessible at your fingertips, right? So it's really important when we look at social media that we actually critically look at it and try to understand where this information is coming from and make sure that we do our own research. And I think we'll talk maybe a little bit more about credibility, later on in the segment here. But where people fall into the trap is when they see their friends like, hey, my buddy Adrian went on this awesome vacation, or hey, Shay bought this awesome new car. I want to buy that too. And it goes back to like keeping up with the Joneses. And because these influencers are so relatable, they're real people, and I'm so motivated to want to be like them. There's times where I might make a poor financial decision because I'm trying to be like them. So we really need to be conscious of our own financial decision making and the types of information that we take in from social media influencers, because like I said, it's really easy to get access to the information, but we really have to be careful about how we make our decisions based on the information we hear.
All right, so Adrian, let's feed up off of a point that Nelson just made in terms of credibility. So what's a rule of thumb that you like to use to gauge whether something you see about investing on social media is actually credible or not?
Yeah, no, that is so important. Like for me, like social media, it's a double-edged sword. There's so many ways to get good, reputable information from there, but it's also like it's a cesspool of bad information and even like predatory information sometimes, right? So for me, the most important thing I want to do to gauge credibility is really consistency. I want to see, like, is this person, do they actually believe what they're saying? Do they practice what they preach? Is this like a philosophy or a mentality that they've kind of, maintained for months or years? Or are they just kind of flip-flopping between issues? Are they, like, I see this all the time where someone will make a video on how dividends are the key to wealth. And then 2 weeks later, they'll make a video saying dividends are a waste of time. And then 2 weeks later, they'll say crypto is the way to build wealth, or penny stocks are the way to build wealth. They keep contradicting themselves and flip-flopping. And it gets to the point where it's like, I don't even know, what does this person really believe? Where do they really stand? And what they're really doing, they're just trying to play the algorithm. They're just trying to chase clicks. They're trying to look for those trend words or those buzzwords. They're just trying to get as many views as they can. You don't have any idea or sense of what they really genuinely believe in. So that's number one. Number two, you also have to think about what are their incentives to make this content, right? Especially if a content creator is making a new topic that kind of comes out of the blue, you have to kind of ask yourself, why are they only talking about this now, right? Maybe are they being paid to make this video? Like, is it a sponsored post or a paid advertisement? Or do they have any other kind of financial incentive, right? Like a lot of times, if you'll see a content creator talking about this really obscure crypto coin or this really obscure penny stock that you've never heard of before, maybe they're trying to do a pump and dump where basically, they bought in at this asset at a very low cost. Then they make a video about it, trying to, build up hype and excitement to try to build up the price. And then while you're busy buying it, they're selling it and cashing out their gains, right? So you really have to make sure you pay attention to those two things. Their consistency, what they genuinely believe, and do they practice what they preach? And number two, what are their incentives? And if their incentives are in the wrong place, maybe, don't take their information with a grain of salt.
I love that you mentioned, potential things like pumping and dumping when it comes to security, because we have seen in recent times a lot of some content creators, some celebrities actually getting fined for doing something similar. So it is important that, investors are actually checking to see how credible this information is. So Shay, when it comes to trading, it's inherently about buying and selling positions much quicker than an investor would. So how can a trader distinguish credible strategies that can actually earn real returns from flimsy or fraudulent ones that they might see on social media?
Yeah, I think it's pretty, for the most part, it's pretty easy to know and tell because first of all, there's no strategy that's gonna guarantee you profit 100% of the time. So when you see strategies online where they say you'll never lose, or the win rate is 100%, or your profits guaranteed, that's already like a lot of red flags. So that's number one. And you wanna see, when you see these, there's a lot of free strategies. Like even on my channel, I have a lot of strategies I share. You also wanna know that what kind of risk tolerance, what kind of risk parameter you need to have for the specific strategies. So there's always risk involved whenever you're buying or selling or shorting securities. So you just want to know clearly that, hey, does the social media influencer, whoever's sharing the strategy, is he or she transparent about the potential risk? Are they also teaching you not just how to buy or sell the stock, but also teaching you where to stop out, where to manage your risk? So those are important factors. And any other keywords such as like copy trading, signals, or like another new things like mirror trading, or a lot of people where you join a prop firm and they automatically they'll copy their trades on your account, like all of that stuff. Like when you see those keywords, you should see them as red flags, because those are just get rich quick schemes. So that's how you can kind of distinguish which kind of strategy you should look into further and learn better for yourself, and which ones you should just avoid altogether.
There's a saying by one of my favorite TV personalities: if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So I do want to give a quick note to our audience. If you want to hear more about using social media as an investor, check out our upcoming episode with Richard Coffin from The Plain Bagel on YouTube. So he'll share the best and worst investing commentary he sees online and what you can learn from it. So click on the link in the upcoming events section of the console that I mentioned, center bottom of the screen there, or visit td.com/IEM to register. I would also encourage our viewers who are on YouTube, if you want to join our conversation, click on the link to register and log into the broadcasting platform we're using right now so you can join our conversation. Okay, so we've heard some of the tips for getting started as investors and traders. Now let's hear about some of your biggest hits and misses and the lessons you learned from them. Adrian, what's one of the smartest decisions you've made as an investor that helped you grow?
Yeah, so for me, my investing strategy, it's really simple. It's about diversification and staying the course, focusing on long-term growth. And for me, that's what it all boils down to. Staying calm and sticking to your original investing plan when the world is falling down around you, right? And I experienced that in 2020, like when the markets were crashing, 20%, 30% over the course of a day, and people were panicking, especially new investors. They were panicking, they were selling, and they were selling at a huge loss. I didn't do that because what was I focusing on? I ignored the short-term noise. I focused on the long term. I know that all the companies that I invested in, they have a long-term future. I know that they'll be able to weather the storm, and they'll be able to recover. And when they do, I will benefit from that recovery. So not only did I, not panic and not sell, which a lot of new investors did, I actually doubled down. I actually invested even more at that low point and bought in those high-quality companies and ETFs at discounted prices. And by doing that, all I had to do was wait a couple of months, maybe even a year later. And when the market recovered, I was able to get all my money back. On top of that, I was able to realize some significant gains because I bought in at those discounted prices. So that, for me, the biggest piece of advice I could say, and the biggest source of my investing success, has been ignoring the noise, focusing on the long-term future of the companies I invest in, and making sure I'm diversified so that no matter what's going on in the market, good times or bad, my money's invested across all sectors, all countries, all markets, and I'm going to do well in the long term. Almost, the odds are in my favor as long as you diversify and focus on the long term.
I think what's interesting is if you take a look at the chart that we have on screen, you're able to see, for instance, let's say you got into the markets at the high of around 2006, 2007. Yes, there was a crash of 2007, 2008. But in the long run, based on right now, you're actually up. So to that point, Adrian, it's about, not trying to time the markets. Yep. Because historically it has been shown not necessarily to beat investors who just stick with the markets.
One thing I'll add, just based on this graph, Also, like on all of these big drops, you see like the COVID-19, the housing crash in 2008. If you zoom in and in the short time frame, it looks like a massive historic drop. But looking at this graph, if you just zoom out by 10, 20 years, those massive drops at the time are actually just small blips. So that's why I always say, when in doubt, zoom out and focus on the long term.
Oh, another great tagline. We're getting so many. When in doubt, zoom out. I love it. So amazing. So thanks for sharing that. So Nelson, let's talk to you. Like, what's one of the best moves you've made as an investor?
How do I follow that? When in doubt, zoom out. That was awesome. It sounds like what Adrian was talking about was building like what Ray Dalio calls an all-weather portfolio, where it doesn't matter what happens in the market. Like, you're well covered, you're diversified, and I mean, history doesn't really tell what happens in the future, but it usually rhymes, right? So I think, if you can build that, something that's going to be sustainable for the long term, you have less to worry about. So for me, going with, one of the heavy hitters, Warren Buffett, he said, you have to be greedy when people are fearful and fearful when people are greedy. And that just ties back to what Adrian was talking about. Most recently with, COVID-19 in 2020, the markets took a big hit and people were scared. People were selling shares and they were worried about, oh my gosh, my portfolio dropped 20, 30% overnight. But if you saw that as an opportunity instead of something to be scared about and something to run away from, there was a really big opportunity to make some really large capital gains during that period of time. So going back to kind of a couple things that I said earlier, learn how to do your own research on what you're trying to invest in and make the moves based on what's most beneficial for you and not what other people are doing.
So I think when you talk about people who are scared during, let's say, bear markets, there's actually an interesting statistic. It's a study done by Visual Capitalist. This was of a span of 20 years, so between 2003 to 2022. And it showed that just missing 10 of the best days during bear markets, and typically the best days are during bear markets, an investor would have had over the span of 20 years, just a return of 5.6%. So this is almost half of what an investor who stayed invested the whole time would have had at 10%. And I'm going to give you another number that would be really interesting. If you missed 60 of the best days, you would actually have lost money. You would have had a negative 4.2% return. Now, these numbers may not seem like a big deal, but keep in mind, we're talking about a span of over 500 trading days here. So 60 days is a small number of days to miss out on the markets, and you could end up with a negative return. So once again, you do want to look at the bigger picture. So thanks for sharing that, Nelson. So for you, Shay, tell us what one of your savviest habits that helped you become a more profitable trader was. What was one of those habits?
Yeah, I have a habit of screenshotting. So I have folders of screenshots going back to 5 years ago when I started this habit, in which I screenshot every single trade I take. I have a format for it. I have a daily chart, I have the intraday chart, I have the 5-minute chart. This way I have a record of all my past trades, and I'll sort them by different strategies, whether it's more like dip buying, trend joining, or short selling. I'll sort them in different strategies. And I'll do that even for the trades I didn't take myself, but I see as like missed opportunities, because this gives me like a visual library of all the past trades that fits my style of trading. And when it comes to optimizing strategies or back testing and kind of modifying my different kinds of setups for every single year of the market, I'll go back and I'll look at, how did this kind of strategies do in a bear market? How did it do in a bull market? This allows me to have otherwise I feel like I'm blind, right? I want to look at how different stocks can do. For example, this is how there's certain stocks that behave the same over the years. For example, meme stocks, they tend to behave the same way, even though, they first started in 2021. We still got some action in meme stocks this year. For example, NVIDIA or those semiconductor stocks, they tend to have very similar price actions again and again, right? Was it Nielsen who earlier said history doesn't repeat itself, but often rhymes? That definitely works the same way when it comes to trading stocks, and especially when it comes to technical analysis. So this is I think it's a very important habit. Most people don't want to do because it requires too much manual work. But I think it's one that can benefit a lot of new traders greatly.
And so one thing I want to mention is that, you are actually able to kind of mirror that. So you have access to the charting tools that we have in Advanced Dashboard. You do have the opportunity to do something similar to what you mentioned, Shay. So you can actually create customized charting. And then investors who also want to maybe follow your footsteps, they're also able to create things like watch lists in our trading platforms. So like WebBroker, Advanced Dashboard, or Active Trader. So it just gives you an opportunity to follow some of the steps that Shay had mentioned here, which is as a way to screenshot what happened in certain times, to see if, history would rhyme with what happened in the past. Also, a quick reminder to our audience that Shay will be sharing her Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Trading later this month. So make sure you tune in if you want to hear more about learning the ropes as a part-time trader. You're able to click on our upcoming events section if you want to register. Plus, you can check out td.com/IAM for a full lineup of events that we have in October. All right, so we've heard about the good. Now we want to hear about the bad, because this is about, we're trying to be real here. So Adrian, tell us what one of your biggest blunders as an investor was that you wish other investors would avoid.
Sure, of course. So this is a very important question. And for me, I'm actually generally pretty risk adverse. So I don't really have any, super dramatic big losses, or like, oh my God, I can't believe, I wish I never bought that stock, or I wish I never bought that investment. For me, my biggest regrets or my biggest mistakes are more so things that I didn't do. A big one of that is actually, I wish I didn't prioritize investing in the international markets. So when I first got started investing, I was exclusively focused on the Canadian and US market. And it was roughly about 50-50 between the two of them, which I think is a great habit for investors to do. But I totally ignored or disregarded the international markets, the European markets, the Asian markets, or the emerging markets, the more like, developing economies, because there you have some huge potential for growth. Yes, it might be a little bit higher risk sometimes, but there's huge development for growth in all of those foreign markets. And I kind of missed out on years and years of capitalizing on that growth because I was excluding it entirely. So, what piece of advice I would give investors is, I think you should still kind of focus on, like, the core of your portfolio should always be, the more well-established Canadian and US markets, but try to have a little bit of a sliver, a little bit of exposure into international and emerging markets as well, because that way you kind of you're diversified across different sectors, but also you're geographically diversified, and that's something that I didn't fully appreciate until a few years later.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Adrian. So Nelson, what's one money mistake you made that held your portfolio back?
So many, I don't even know where to start, to be honest. But similar to Adrian, like I'm an accountant, so I'm like risk averse is like how I'm wired. But this was quite a few years, like early in the journey, I had a friend tell me, Nelson, you have to invest in this stock. It's endorsed by a celebrity. And it was a music artist, and I won't say their name, but I was a big fan of their music. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, it has to go to the moon, right? So, let's just say I paid my tuition in investing school, the School of Hard Knocks of investing early on. And I guess the message to our viewers here is, don't follow advice just because it's celebrity endorsed or because your best buddy tells you, unless it's Adrian or Shay, they probably have a little bit more insight than somebody like me. But just be conscious of where you're getting your information from, and always do your own research. And it could be as simple as going on Google and just type in, like the ETF or the stock or the company name, and just click the news tab and see what's happening on the news. So yeah, don't invest just because a celebrity endorses.
I think, something that's really interesting, Nelson, when you say that is that, so fascinatingly enough, the best stock for me might not be the best stock for you, right? Because I have different goals. I have a different risk appetite. So I may have started investing earlier. So when I tell you, oh, I'm up 1,000%, maybe because I've been holding the stock for 10 years. So even if the market drops by 35%, it doesn't really impact me. Maybe I don't need my funds for another 30 years, and maybe you need yours in 5 months. So yeah, it is important to know yourself as an investor, because once again, the best stock for person A may not necessarily be the best stock for person B. All right, so Shay, what's one trading mistake you've made that you wish you could go back in time and reverse?
Oh my God, I bag held so many stocks, especially in the first 2 years. Bag holding is when you're holding on to like a losing position and I just didn't want to realize those losses and sell for a huge loss. Yeah, I did that for a lot of like penny stocks, IPO stocks. I was speculative. What was meant to be a day trade. I meant to close those positions in one day. It turned into like a swing trade or like an investment over the course of weeks or months. So definitely lesson learned. You gotta respect your stop loss. You gotta understand how to calculate position sizing. Otherwise, I think, at the time I was trading, I was supposed to be risking $10 to $50, anywhere around there. When I back held to those stocks and I didn't realize the loss, I just thought that it was going to come back up and I'll sell it break even or small profit. But no, some of these stocks, especially penny stocks, they just keep on tanking lower and lower. What was supposed to be a $50 loss turned to be like 900, 1,000. So yeah, very expensive lessons, but I think it's some that a lot of new traders need to learn to respect in their first couple of years.
I do want to say thank you all for sharing, because, and the fact you can actually think of something to share. I've had so many of those that I could share as well. Somebody told me saying like, holding on to a losing position sometimes is like throwing good money after bad. You're hoping that it becomes good overall. That may not become the case. So that might tie back to what you mentioned, Shay. So thank you all for actually sharing with us. So we're going to leave the interview portion of our conversation there, but we're not done yet. So we're now actually going to open the floor and take questions from our viewers. So once again, if you're looking to join the conversation, you're able to do that. On the right side of your screen, you'll see a box where you can enter your questions, and I'll present that to our panelists and we'll get their answers. If you are on YouTube streaming, you do have an opportunity to register and join us over here so you can actually get your questions answered. All right, so I'm going to start off with a question from Teresa. So Teresa is saying, is it better to invest under a TFSA, so a tax-free savings account, an RSP, or a non-registered account for trading stocks? So I'm going to start with you, Shay. What would you say?
Well, first of all, trading stocks is not investing. So if you're asking specifically about trading stocks, I always recommend to do not trade in your TFSA. Because trading is technically a business activity. So TFSA is meant for investing long term. So there has been cases where some really big traders, they traded in the TFSA and CRA went to claw back those profits because they deem that as business profits and should be taxed accordingly. So yeah, so I'm not saying, everyone's going to trade big enough for CRA to care, but I think you should consider trading in non-registered accounts if you are just trading stocks, not investing.
All right. So thanks for clearing that up, because I know Teresa's question is it better to invest than concludes with trading stocks. So thank you for clarifying that there's a difference between trading and investing. That's what we've been trying to make that difference here. So thanks for mentioning how trading could be considered a business. If you do that in your tax-free savings account, you could be taxed. All right. So I'm gonna also ask Adrian. So what do you think to Teresa's question?
No, Shay gave it a brilliant answer. So well done there, Shay. One thing I'll add though, just to piggyback this point, not necessarily about trading, but any kind of risky or speculative investment. I generally don't recommend doing that in your tax sheltered accounts, like your TFSA and your RSP. And the reason for that, well, there's two main reasons. One is that, when you're doing something risky, there's a pretty good chance that you actually lose money. And in those tax sheltered accounts, if you lose money, that money's gone. You don't get any, there's no salvaging it. There's no benefit. You don't get to claim a capital loss tax credit. Furthermore, this for me is the more important. If you lose money in your TFSA or your RSP account, you're effectively permanently losing that really precious contribution room. You don't really get that back. So that's why I always, for what I recommend and what I do is that in my tax sheltered accounts, my TFSA and my RSP, I only focus on, blue chip stocks, well-established ETFs, long-term investing. The more risky speculative plays, that's where I do my non-registered account.
All right. So thanks for sharing your perspective. And Nelson, what's your take on this?
Yeah, in addition to that, I would say timing of when to use these accounts is really important as well. So TFSA, it's after-tax dollars you invest now, but in the future you have a tax benefit because they're tax-free gains. RSP, the other way around. So what I did early on in my career is when I was when my income was a little bit lower, like when I had just graduated from school and was entry-level positions, I actually did not contribute to my RSP because I was trying to build up that RSP room because I knew that in 5 to 10 years my income would be a lot higher. And the impact of the decrease in taxable income from the RSP contribution would have a greater, let's say, tax saving that I would be able to reinvest into like a TFSA. So I think timing of when to use these accounts is really, really important.
I absolutely love having a panel here because it's so great to hear different perspectives. And I hope that our viewers are learning a lot as well. So I do want to mention that our panelists have agreed to stick around for an additional 15 minutes. So we'll be extending the session by another 15 minutes to give you the opportunity to get your questions answered. So please ask us those questions. Our panelists are gracious enough to stick around to get those questions answered. Okay, so we're moving on to the next question. And our next question is from Vishnu. So Vishnu is saying, I'm a new investor and I am overwhelmed from all the information that I get about any stock details. What are some of the most important factors or details to look at and know whether a stock is a good one to invest in or not? So this time we're going to switch places and I'll start off with you, Nelson.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors. For me, I'm a big ETF investor. So I like diversified risk. I don't personally, because I don't know enough about individual stock picking, aside from, the standard blue chip, big banks, that type of stuff. I'm a big ETF guy. So what I do when I look at an ETF is I'll go online and I'll just Google it and I'll see what are the holdings inside that ETF. And I'll just read the company names and I'll see what the allocation percentages are. And then if I want to go even further, I'll look up those individual companies to see what they do. Are they profitable businesses? Do they have a long runway? Or how are they doing on the news? Like, is there a lot of negative news coming out about them that, maybe they're going to insolvency or bankruptcy, things like that. And that's how I make a decision based on, I would say, a holistic approach. I don't take a full numbers approach like somebody like Shay might do from a day trading perspective.
All right. So speaking about Shay, what's your take on Vishnu's question?
Yeah, I'll be answering from the trading stocks perspective. The most important thing I always look at when it comes to a ticker is the chart, especially the daily chart. I'll take a look at how the stock has performed in the last couple of weeks and last couple of months. Look at what the candles look like, whether it's trending up. And whether we are likely to continue like a bullish trend or a bearish trend to the downside. So that's the first thing I look at. And then I'll dive into news and fundamental analysis after that.
All right. So thanks for sharing from the perspective of, more technical analysis. And Adrian, so what are your thoughts?
So my perspective as a long-term investor, it's a bit of a hybrid answer, I would say. I care about the qualitative analysis, but also the quantitative analysis. So the numbers, the metrics, the financial metrics, those numbers really matter. I don't have enough time to get into that. We can have a whole 1 hour long conversation about the financial metrics. But on the qualitative side of things, remember, a stock, there's nothing magical about a stock. A stock just represents a part of a business. When you buy a stock, you're owning a part of the business. So you really have to understand what is this business? How does the business make money? What is the business's futures? What are their challenges? How are they going to kind of evolve and maintain their competitive edge over the next, 5, 10, 20 years? So that's for me, that's the most important thing when I'm trying to buy a stock. I need to understand exactly what this business does, how they make money, and so that I can kind of, have an expectation in my mind of where this company is going to go. Yes, the numbers definitely tell one part of the story, but you have to remember that at the end of the day, this is a business. And if you don't understand what the business is doing or how they operate, I don't think you should own that company.
So what I love about the answers we just got from all three of you is the varied responses, right? And this is what is great about investing, is that there is no one method that works best. So Nelson was talking about investing in ETFs. If you're not comfortable jumping right into stocks, maybe get an ETF where, it's more diversified. There's more companies in there. We have Adrian talking about, doing more fundamental analysis. So, you are able to grab some of that information about management, about where the company is going in terms of some numbers. And then Shay is talking about it from a trader's perspective, which would be more technical analysis. So there is something for everyone. So I do hope that Vishnu, you were able to, pick and choose which one worked for you. And hopefully you have learned something new and you are ready to start investing. All right, so we're going to have a poll on screen with different questions. We're getting such great questions here. So I want our audience to vote. And based on the vote that we get, that would determine, we'll answer the top 2 questions. So take some time to vote on the questions that are going to show up on your screen. And once again, we will present those questions to our panelists, the top 2 questions, 2 voted questions to our panelists. All right. So while we're going through that and voting, I'm going to ask a question from Marianne. So Marianne is asking or saying, for a new beginner who knows nothing about investing but is keen to learn, what are some first steps to start with? So Marianne wants to know that. So we'll start with Adrian now.
Okay. First step, if you've never invested before, learn the bare bones, the fundamentals. What is the stock market? What is a stock? What is an ETF? What is a mutual fund? Then take it one step further. You got to learn about, there's different places to make your investments. You have to learn about the different kind of investment accounts, right? Things like the TFSA, the tax-free savings account, the RRSP, the non-registered account, the RESP if you have kids. There's many different taxable benefits of using each of those accounts, and they're quite different. So if you understand how they work and the pros and cons of each, it can save you a lot of money, especially when it comes to taxes, if you utilize them with the correct strategy. After that, then it kind of becomes a little bit more advanced. And then that's when you start doing the more individual research on individual companies, individual stocks, individual ETFs, kind of what separates them and why you should pick one or the other. But at the very first step is literally just the bare bones. You have to kind of understand the lingo, like what these words mean and what the key difference is between the different investing strategies. All of us here on the panel, we all have slightly different strategies. And it's important to identify, which one kind of lines up best with you, your situation, your circumstances, and your goals.
All right. So thanks for that. So Nelson, what would you say would be the first few steps to start investing for Marianne?
Yeah, Marianne, thanks for that question. A really good one. If I could start today, start all over again, or if I was in your position, I would actually ask all my friends and try to understand what their strategy is and why they do it. So in addition to what Adrian says, I'm not discounting the fact that we need to understand the fundamentals. We need to master that. We need to understand what we are trying to invest in. But I would also almost do my own market research with my trusted network and peer group and say, hey, Adrian, what do you invest in? Or what accounts do you use? Similar to the questions that we're getting asked today. And just poll your friends and then accumulate that data and see kind of where the overlaps are and how they align with what you have learned and what you know from the research that you've done, and then make your decisions based on that way. Because the more people you talk to, you might start to realize oh, hey, maybe this company isn't so good to invest in because it doesn't align with my values, or maybe this account is better for me because I'm in this position in this part of my life and my career. So the more information you have, the more sound a decision you can make.
All right. Okay. So Shay, over to you in terms of first few steps. And let's take it from the perspective of, let's say, a trader.
Yeah. I think the first things you should learn, the first resource you should utilize, Marianne, is YouTube. Whether you're trying to learn to trade or learn to invest, there's tons of free resources there. So yeah, if I see you're looking for how to invest, so I'll just search how to start investing or investing for beginners. That's where you're gonna see a lot of videos from maybe some familiar faces here. I will say though, if you're looking to start investing, don't watch my channel because my channel is mostly geared towards trading. I don't want my content to kind of have you deviate from what you're really trying to learn. So definitely check out the other panelists' channels for getting started in investing. But YouTube's a great place to start. Like I learned how to cook there. I learned how to clean my home there. I learned a lot of things on YouTube. They call it YouTube University for a reason. So yeah, start with the free resources.
Great, thank you for that recommendation. I'll say one thing. Yeah. Also, don't go to my channel if you want to learn how to trade. I don't do options trading. I don't do day trading. Go to Shay. She's the pro there.
I love the honesty that we're having on the panel, and I really do hope that our audience is actually really learning from our panelists here, because they are sharing real information that would help you as an investor or a trader get started. And yes, I have been to University of YouTube a few times. I've been successful sometimes, not so much. I will not share in what case, but yeah. So, okay, so the results are in. Thank you to everyone who voted. So we're gonna start off with the top voted question here. And this question I'm gonna present to you, Adrian.
Sure.
So it says, is it better to invest in dividend stocks as opposed to buying a stock to sell when it goes up?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So I guess it's kind of asking about focusing on dividends versus capital appreciation.
Yes.
But at the same time, also like just because a stock is going up doesn't mean you should sell. For me, I would say focus on your goals. If your goal is to make money in the short term, then absolutely cash in your gains. But if you're focusing on retirement or a long-term investing goal, just because the stock is going up doesn't mean you should sell. Like if you still fundamentally believe in the long-term future of the company, then hold on to it and collect more and more gains as the years go on. But again, the main question being is, difference of should you prioritize dividends versus capital appreciation? That's a question we all kind of face, and it's a question I get asked almost on a daily basis. It's not, when it comes to investing or really anything to do with money, it's not all, you don't have to go all in one or the other. I really do a hybrid approach, right? I invest in both dividend stocks and growth stocks. I invest in both Canadian stocks and US stocks, both individual stocks and ETFs. You can do a combination of both, and at whatever kind of, weighting that matches your goals, your risk tolerance, all that kind of stuff. I will say this, like there's definitely certain industries and certain companies which lend themselves more towards capital appreciation versus dividends, right? So usually the more defensive, well-established companies that have been around for decades, things like telecommunications, banks, financial industry, energy companies, consumer staples, those are the kind of companies which will be dividend stocks. Now, when you look at the other side of things, when you want to look at the more like aggressively growing companies, they're the newer companies, usually like things like the tech companies or healthcare companies which haven't been around as long. They don't have as long of a track record, but they might have higher potential for growth. Those are companies that they don't really want to pay out dividends to their investors because they would rather reinvest that extra income into the company and grow even further. So again, it's really important to kind of do a bit of a mix of both. And when you're trying to decide which one you want to do, which one you want to focus on, it really kind of boils down to the company or the industry itself, right? If you want a tech company, dividends aren't really going to be a factor. But if you want those other sectors, the more defensive sectors, then most of those companies will likely pay a dividend. And there's a lot more to discuss there. One thing I will say is that a big kind of plus in the dividend category is that you kind of get that extra kind of peace of mind, knowing that no matter what's going on, even if the market's going down, your money is still kind of earning you money, right? Whereas if you're a purely growth-focused investor, if your money goes down or if you hold on to a stock for 3 years and you're still at the same buying point, during those 3 years, you didn't really make money. You're still at the same point you started off. Whereas in a dividend stock, even if you're going through a low, like a bear market, or the market's taking a downturn, even when things are going down, as long as you don't sell, you're still collecting that passive income every quarter or every month. So a lot of investors who have a lower risk appetite kind of prefer the dividend route for that kind of extra peace of mind. They have the possibility of, benefiting from long-term capital gains, but while they're waiting for that, they're still collecting that passive income through the form of dividends.
Well, thanks for sharing, Adrian. Another consideration is if you're just all about income, you want to be making income, you could consider dividends. I will mention that dividends are not guaranteed. So a company that has always historically paid dividends may cut dividends for one reason or the other. So just something to be aware of. But yes, so you want to know your investing goal, as Adrian has mentioned, before you then choose what works best for you. Right. So let's move on to our second highest voted question here. And I'll start off with Shay for this question. So Shay, the question says, should I invest? We can edit this to trade as well. So, or should I invest now or wait for a dip in the market? Keep it in mind the current geopolitical issues. For now, I have money parked in my high interest savings account.
Yeah, I'll answer that from a trader's perspective. When it comes to trading, yes, you are right. Every single time there's some new geopolitical tension that breaks out, whether it's in, this year, we've seen that a lot. Maybe pretty much every other week, we see some sort of new headlines about the crisis in Middle East. The market does gap down. And from a trader's perspective, while the gap down overnight is very scary, it actually presents some really good buy the dip opportunities for trading. So while it is concerning there and it is, it affects all of us, trading wise, there's still a lot of opportunities. And as long as you manage your risk and you know how to navigate it when the market's volatile, with the overnight gap ups or gap downs. So that's from my trading perspective. There's still opportunities and there's no reason to shy away from the market.
All right. So Nelson, what would you say from an investor's perspective? So should they wait or should they invest now?
My answer is no. Like, do not wait if you can. And if it fits your goals, right? Like your money's parked in a high interest savings account, possibly because maybe it's an emergency fund, or maybe you're saving up for something specifically and you might need that cash in the next 1, 3, 6, maybe in the next year. So just be aware of like where you need to spend your money. And if you can invest it, I would always advise to invest as soon as possible, as often as possible, and as early as you can, because over time, there's a principle called dollar cost averaging. So you might be saying, well, maybe I speculate in 2 weeks that there's going to be a dip in the market, and today it's really expensive to buy this share or this ETF. But if you extrapolate that, I forget the saying now, it was when in doubt, zoom out. If you zoom out, and if you remember that graph over time, the charts are moving, like they're moving every day. So you might think that you're getting a deal today, but it was actually more expensive than it would have been 6 months ago. So I think, the more you can buy, the more frequently you can buy within your means, the more you can reap the benefits over a long period of time as a long-term investor.
All right. So thank you so much for that answer. So we have another question here, and this one we're going to address to Shay. So it says, how do you control yourself from over trading? This question is from Guy Pador. So thank you for asking. So Shay, how do you control yourself?
That's a very good question, Guy, and thank you for asking. So I journal every single one of my trades. So from analyzing my past journals, I realized that I trade the most on my red days. Yes, I do have red days where I lose money, and I trade the most number of trades on those days. And I look at my green days or my green months, I actually trade the least. So just from looking at that an overview, I know that I should stop trading if I'm already red on the day, or if I'm already very frustrated with my losers on the day. So So just from knowing that perspective, it helps me control how much I trade on my losing days. If that say today I'm going through a bad day, I'm already down a couple $100, or a couple $1,000, I know that, hey, I should stop, because if I keep trading, I'm gonna dig the hole even deeper. So that's just something that I recommend every trader to do, to journal your trades and kind of realize, okay, the amount of trades you take on the red days versus the green days. I think you may find similar results on your journal, just like mine. So definitely do that. That will give you an insight of your trader psychology, and that'll incentivize you to control yourself, I guess, to trade less on the days that you're already not doing well.
So I love when you say this, Shay, because it takes me back to you. It just shows you're a true technical analyst, because it's all about trends. So you're journaling, you're trying to find the trend. What is happening on my red days? Why am I green on these days? And you've come to the conclusion that I'm trading a lot on my red days, getting frustrated, and fewer trades on the green days. So I love that. So I hope that answered that question for you, Guy. So now I have a question from Victor, and Victor is saying, how do you mentally navigate periods when your investments are stagnant or underperforming for days or even weeks? So Nelson, we'll start off with you.
That's a really great question, because I think a lot of people lose motivation and or interest, which means that their discipline starts to break. And that's something that's very, very important when it comes to long-term investing, is you have to be consistent with it. And even maybe you had a stretch of a really good few months where you could invest $500 or $1,000 a month, and then 1 month you could only invest $50 a month, and you also feel like the market isn't moving in the way that you want it to move. It's really, really important to stay the course and to have that long-term vision in mind, and think about, in 20, 30, 40 years down the road, however long your investment timeline is, what will your portfolio look like?
All right. So thank you so much for that answer. Adrian, what's your take on this?
No, that's a great answer. I agree wholeheartedly. One thing I will say is that, yeah, when you're a beginner investor, this will happen. It's not a question of if, but when. Like, when you're a beginner investor, you're going to get so excited. You're going to get so caught up in it. And you're going to be logging into your account and checking your portfolio, 20 times a day. Every 5-10 minutes, you're going to see, oh my God, it went up by 0.02% or went down by 0.1%, right? And that's totally normal. Allow yourself that kind of excitement. But I promise you, like, that really doesn't matter. That's just short-term noise. And I promise you, like the best way to invest is to cut that out and ignore it. Now that I've been investing for basically 10 years now, I can tell you, I go days, sometimes even a week or more, without even logging into my investment account, because I do not care about what's going to happen to daily fluctuations. Going up by 1%, down by 2%, that means nothing to me. I care about, going long-term growth of 60%, 70%, 100%. That's what I'm focused on. And for me, that's what's kind of what Nelson's point was. Like, that's a huge source of motivation, is when I go on my investment account and I zoom out and I can see my long-term, my 5-year performance or my 10-year performance, and I see those double digits, triple digits returns. That's what really matters. The 1% to 2% a day, those daily fluctuations, that means nothing to me. Focus on the long term. And again, that there's no real, it's easy for me to say that, and everyone's going to say that, but until it's really your money and you start kind of going through that and living through that, you're not really going to fully appreciate that. But I promise you, one day you're going to learn to just kind of unplug and don't just stare at your portfolio, because it literally doesn't do anything for you, unless you're day trading, of course. But if you're a long-term investor, right, staring at your portfolio, staring at those numbers aren't going to change them. Go on with your life, trust in your investing strategy, trust in the companies and the ETFs that you put your money into, and, enjoy life. And then check back maybe a week or two later, months later, and then you could reevaluate if things change.
And that's the importance of having some kind of strategy, right? Because some people may have a calendar rebalancing strategy. So they go in there every quarter to reevaluate. But to your point, making decisions on the fly, Adrian, might actually negatively impact you as an investor. You did mention trader, and I know Shay did talk about, her red and green days. So Shay, have you ever had a period when it's been a stretch of days or even weeks? So to Victor's question.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually going through one at the moment. My trading hasn't been going too hot the last 2 weeks or so. And this has happened before, while it is very frustrating during periods of, I guess, stagnation or underperforming, I just size down a lot. Maybe I used to risk $1,000. I'll size down to only risking 300 and go from there. I will say that as a trader, I've been trading for 10 years now. And I know every year I will have periods of time where I go through red months or red weeks. I learned that while it is very difficult in the moment, eventually, like, there will be some really good opportunities show up maybe next week or tomorrow or next month that I will be able to recover from. So it's just like in the meantime, I want to size down and stay conservative. So that's what I would recommend for the traders listening to this. When you're not doing too well, be conscious about it, be aware of it, size down. Don't trade more or trade riskier just because you're on a losing streak.
All right. So thank you all so much for those great responses there. And that's all the time we have for this episode. I want to say a big thank you to our panelists for sharing your tips, for getting started, for investing in trading. We're walking away from this conversation with some really great taglines. So, stock the stock, when in doubt, zoom out. And history doesn't repeat itself. It often rhymes. So, you can create different sayings there. But yeah, so that was really awesome. But so I just want you on the panel to share your final thoughts. I'm going to start with you, Adrian.
Yeah, sure. No, I'll echo my previous point. When in doubt, zoom out. Focus on the long term, right? If you're a long-term investor, you can't predict the short term. I can't predict it. Warren Buffett can't predict it. No one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. But I can reasonably predict what's going to happen 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I know so-and-so company is going to continue to be profitable and be around decades from now. Those are the kind of companies I want to invest in. Those are the kind of places I want to put my money in for the long term. So that's what I say. When in doubt, zoom out.
All right. What about you, Shay?
I just want to thank everyone for tuning into today's webinar. And then for the traders here I know I saw a lot of questions that I wasn't able to answer. For the traders here who want to join, I have a dedicated webinar later this month in which we'll just be talking about trading specifically. But thank you everyone for tuning in. If you're going through a red month like I am right now, you're not alone. It's okay. Stay small and be conservative.
All right. And Nelson, last word to you.
Money's not that scary. Investing's not that scary, right? And I want you guys to remember that we all make mistakes. Like, if you watch my TEDx talk, I'm a CPA, and I was not good with my money for many years until one day I was thinking, why? This doesn't make any sense. I'm supposed to be a money master, but I don't even have my personal finances in order. So just remember that you don't have to get it right from day one. You can make mistakes. You can learn along the way, refine, and keep going and stay the course, because all long-term investors, in my opinion, will be rewarded. So thank you guys for showing up.
All right. So I want to thank you again for joining us. We love to hear your feedback about what you thought about today's session. So I encourage you to fill out our survey. You're currently able to see how you can find that on the screen. So fill it out. Let us know what you loved about today's session, what more you would like to see. Also, make sure to register for the rest of our upcoming live webinars. And as Shay mentioned, Shay's going to be back with us October 30th to talk about her ultimate beginner's guide to trading. So I would encourage you to check that out, register for it to get your questions answered. You can find more of our on-demand content on the Learning Center and on our YouTube page. You can scan the QR code on the bottom left of the screen. Thank you all so much for sticking with us, and we'll see you all next time.
Have more questions? Check out the links to the right and in the description below.